Some people say there's no such thing as a bad trip. And with all the positive research these days about the therapeutic potential for psychedelics in treating conditions like addiction and PTSD and depression and anxiety, it might be easy to put on our rose-colored glasses, pop a couple of mushrooms, and go frolicking in a field of daisies. But still, when it comes to there being no such thing as a bad trip, I'd have to disagree. Saying there's no such thing as a bad trip is really meant to refer to the idea that oftentimes a challenging or uncomfortable experience with psychedelics can actually serve to teach us a lot about ourselves or about the world or even about being human. But sometimes that understanding can be hard-earned and can take a lot of time to integrate. As a psychedelic and plant medicine facilitator myself, I've seen bad trips become really good ones, and I've also seen bad trips that were just that, bad. I'm all for being an optimist, but I also know what it's like to be in a bad trip when you really aren't able to connect to any comfort or understanding that everything's going to be okay. But the good thing is, most bad trips are easily avoided by doing a little bit of preparation. And that also ensures that when tough experiences do arise, we know that we're going to be okay, even if we come out the other side with a few things to process. Knowing the risks associated with using psychedelics is going to help us avoid the worst case scenarios. The most basic risks, of course, have to do with what substance you're taking and how much of it, and what doesn't mix with that substance. Other risks are not choosing the appropriate setting or company for our intention, or not knowing what our underlying intentions or motivations are. But if we don't know the risks, or the psychedelic experience surprises us with something unexpected, as psychedelics love to do, we may experience some of the following less desirable effects. So psychedelics can magnify things that are already present in our field, especially things that are unconscious or semi-conscious. So this could be like an enhanced sense or an enhanced presence of underlying emotions or mental states, like worry or fear or judgment. Could be self-consciousness, It's where the mind enters into an obsessive loop of anxiety or preoccupation with a certain thing or feeling, and it becomes all-encompassing. In some cases, especially if we're feeling fearful or really uncomfortable or unsafe, for example, the perceptual distortion that psychedelics create can cause confusion, paranoia, or even panic, or thinking that we're dying or that someone is trying to hurt us. Some adverse physical effects could be things like nausea, shaking, sweating, vomiting, none of which may be ideal if you're taking psychedelics in a social setting, like with a group of friends at a party or a festival or something like that. In some cases where people become very disoriented, they can lose their sense of surroundings, their balance, and possibly even end up hurting themselves. It's also possible to lose your sense of self, and sometimes these states of depersonalization or derealization can last a few days or even longer. And this highlights the value of a support network and an integration plan. The thing about adverse effects to psychedelics like these is that if a person doesn't have the tools or the appropriate supports around them to deal with them as they arise, then the effects have the potential to compound from bad to worse. When an experience becomes so frightening that it becomes traumatizing, or when we're taken advantage of or abused during an experience, perhaps by shaman or facilitator at a psychedelic retreat or ceremony, or by a stranger at a music festival who doesn't understand the concept of clear and ongoing consent, it can sometimes take a lot of work in healing and in therapy after the experience to deal with all of the things that come up. Effects like looping thoughts, discomfort, paranoia, and physical reactions like nausea and sweating are actually normal for some psychedelic substances, if not overly common on low doses. I don't mean to tell you all of this to scare you, but rather so that you know if you experience these things that you will be okay. But dosage is a key thing to keep in mind. Increasing the dosage won't necessarily increase the positive effects, but it can definitely correlate with an increase in the negative ones. Don't get fooled by ideas like the heroic dose or any sort of psychedelic bravado, okay? These substances are unique for everyone, and encouraging upping the dose just isn't responsible or relevant. So to discourage the heroic dose and to discourage the idea that there's no such thing as a bad trip, these are some things that could characterize what is often called a bad trip. A really bad trip could be ending up in an emergency room or a police car. And a really, really bad trip is ending up with long-lasting negative changes to our personality or our mind, or even death. Remember, the chances of a lot of these can increase if we're using substances alone, or taking a substance that we aren't actually sure of what it is, or with people that we don't feel comfortable with. Testing and proper preparation can mitigate a lot of the risks with psychedelics. As Dr. David Nutt, neuropsychopharmacologist at the Imperial College of London, says about psilocybin mushrooms, "I have no worries about people using it recreationally. If you're using these for medicine, you need to have appropriate psychotherapy and medical cover. If you're using them for recreation, well, as long as you're aware of the risks and you're not suffering from major mental illness, then they're probably relatively safe. For the most part, psychedelics are not as inherently dangerous as most of us were led to believe. The best way to know the risks, ensure your safety, and enhance positive and beneficial outcomes from using psychedelics is to use a proven framework that will help to guide you before, during, and after your experience so that you can feel safe and supported in your journey to wholeness or the fulfillment of whatever your intention is." The 7-step framework for psychedelic use is just that. Check out the link in the description below to access this comprehensive, one-stop resource designed to make it easy for you to make good choices with psychedelics, and to greatly diminish the chances of ending up on a really bad trip. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, found it valuable in any way, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon for notifications. All of these things really help the channel grow and reach the people who can benefit the most from this information. So hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.